come from the bowels of hell.
The Dana Gould Hour.
Jungle worms and swamp rats run around your feet.
I fought a dog that killed the calf that ate the canary. What is truth?
And once again, welcome back.
Ho, 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 and happy holidays. The air is brisk, the tree is up, and COVID's back. It must be Christmas. Or Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa. It's everyone's favorite gift-based winter holiday. But here is hoping sincerely that you and yours are safe and healthy and cozied up for the break. We have put together a little something for you to listen to while you wrap the presents. And it's another old-school two-hander episode to send you off into 2022. Katharine Coldiron is here. Katharine is an author and a film critic who has written a book about Plan 9 from outer space. Now, it's part of a series of monographs about cult films, and you'll get all the details in the interview. And I highly recommend them. The Plan 9 book is great, very illuminating, and I know a lot about Plan 9, but Katharine's book actually managed to articulate stuff about the film that I had always felt, but couldn't quite put into words, if that makes any sense. Katharine Coldiron talking about Plan 9 and other films that are so bad, they're great. Also, Martin Olson is here. Marty is a writer and an author and a musician. I've known Marty since I started in stand-up way back in the day, back in Boston. Marty is here to talk about his new book, The Encyclopedia of Hell, Volume 2, The Conquest of Heaven, which basically reads like the novelization of a Terry Gilliam film he hasn't gotten around to making yet. Or if J.R.R. Tolkien was a comedy writer. Or, well, why don't you listen to the interview and judge for yourself? And of course, True Tales from Weirdsville takes a deep dive into my favorite Christmas movie, John Carpenter's The Thing. Hey, if you enjoy True Tales from Weirdsville, then you will no doubt enjoy The Cinemorph. The Cinemorph is a twice-weekly column that I publish on the new platform Bulletin, and it's basically mini episodes of True Tales from Weirdsville that you have to read them, though. I don't read them. I write them, and you read them. But they are delivered right to your email inbox. Just go to danagould.bulletin.com and subscribe. Like the podcast, it's free and worth it. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, while I have your ear, might I recommend the film Joyride, streaming now, starring yours truly and Bobcat Goldthwait. The AV Club called it catnip for stand-up comedy nerds. Joyride, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Lastly, thank God, if you like the show, please consider being a Dana Gould Hour Sky Cadet. Go to danagould.com and sign up for our Patreon. $5 a month gets you extra audio content, extra video content, and some other junk. We don't have graduated levels. $5 a month, and you get some stuff. Be a Sky Cadet, not a shy cadet. A simple deal for complicated times. What did I leave out? Hanging with Dr. Z, that's what. Season 2 premieres in February. Again, like the podcast, it's all thanks to your generosity, and I sincerely appreciate it. And to show you how much I appreciate it, I'm going to give you a little present and shut up. So now, it's on to our filthy business.
Tune in, it's a gas. It's the Dana Gould Hour podcast.
It's a brisk fall day high above the Mulholland Drive view shelf here in sunny Southern California, and I'm joined by someone who I spoke with. I met as I'm wont to do in my areas of interest, which are intense if narrow. I'd heard about somebody who had written a monograph about Plan 9 from outer space. And you may be asking yourself, what's a monograph? Because that's what I asked myself. So instead of me telling you, I'll introduce you to the person that wrote it, and they'll tell you what a monograph is. But I will say that I read it, and I found it fascinating. And I know a lot about Plan 9 just because of my general interest. I was super impressed. And it actually put into words things that I had felt about Plan 9 that I didn't know how to express. If you've not seen Plan 9 from outer space and you're a listener of this podcast, I'm confused. But my suggestion would be, before you hear this interview, watch the movie. You will not regret the hour and 15, 20 minutes it takes. In the meantime, please welcome the author of the Plan 9 from Outer Space monograph. She's also a writer and a critic, Katharine Coldiron.
Thank you for having me here.
I know that Smiths, the people with the last name of Smith, are descended from probably Smiths. Coldiron. Talk to me.
So it's from the German Kulteisen, which translates to cold iron. And I believe was an Ellis Island translation, but I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Well, that would track. Yeah.
But I think I read somewhere that witch hunters used to use cold iron to harm witches. And since my family is from...
We're going to leave you with wrinkles in your clothes.
No, I think the idea is like that was harmful to them, the same way that iron is supposedly harmful to fairies. I don't know, but since my family's from Germany, I
believe you mean fairies.
Perhaps.
Do you mean, when you say fairies, do you mean fairies?
I mean, I don't mean Guy Fieri. I mean like the Fae, like David Bowie.
I don't mean Guy Fieri, but there can be Guy Fieris. This could take all day.
Yes.
So first of all, what is a monograph? Because I know Sherlock Holmes was always writing them. I'm working on a monograph.
A monograph is a single subject book that is often about a work of art. But sometimes can be, I guess, about other things. And in this case, it's a line of books, Midnight Movie Monographs, that the whole line is about specific movies. Midnight Movie Monographs. And is this a line? Are you a part of the group of authors that write these, or is this your series? No, it's not my series at all. It's a series of books. It's confusing because it's...
Is it PS published by like Feral House or someplace?
No. PS is the publisher. They're a UK publisher. And then they have an imprint called Electric Dreamhouse Press. And then Electric Dreamhouse has a line of books called Midnight Movie Monographs. Okay. And they publish... Like Electric Dreamhouse publishes other books that are
Electric Dreamhouse, also my name in several chat rooms that have since been suspended.
I think it was a screamcore band back in the 90s.
It was Guar's spin-off band in the way that Dukes of the Stratosphere came from XTC.
Yes. So
we're driving away the viewers with the obscure reference. If you're still with us, we're impressed.
So it's the idea is that all of these books are written by authors who want to dive really deep into a particular movie, and they've all been about cult films. That's why it's Midnight Movie Monographs. And I asked the editor if I could write about a bad movie, and he said sure. So that's where this came from.
That's great. Well, there's no movie that's worse or better, and that's the conundrum of Plan 9 from Outer Space. What was your first? How did you first discover it? I will say this, if I may. There's no movie like it, and you can maybe help me out on an ongoing project that I have that has proven fruitless. As you may or may not know, I do Plan 9 from Outer Space live as a stage show. And we filmed it because it was COVID. We did it on Zoom. And then that aired on TCM.
And I missed it.
Film
and I
festival.
really want to know where I can find a recording.
Oh, I can get it for you. I'm sure I'll ask Janet Varney.
Okay.
She's the brain. I'll ask Janet and I will absolutely get you a film of that. I know it's here. I know it's somewhere here. But so TCM has contacted us and said, hey, we'd love you to do that again, but obviously a different movie. And finding a movie that is as good as Plan 9 in its ineptitude, earnestness, inventiveness is next to impossible. People just say, get any old bad movie. No, bad movies are boring. Plan 9 is never boring. That's why
Absolutely
it's not a bad
true.
movie.
Yeah.
And I've looked at the Oscar was highly touted by Harlan Ellison.
Okay.
Which I've yet to really look at. I did look at there was a movie that I thought would be good, The Brain That Wouldn't Die.
Yeah.
It's possible.
It's a little bit of a bummer.
Bit of a bummer. And I Married a Monster from Outer Space has some potential just in its like that every woman is just desperate to get married. And that's the whole running gag of the entire movie. And then there was, but I've really run into a brick wall in terms of finding a movie that is as entertaining as Plan 9 on the page.
Yeah, I think other Ed Wood movies might do the trick. They because the movie that he wrote,
Glenn or Glenda doesn't work.
No, not Glenn or Glenda. I'm
yeah.
thinking about movies that he wrote but didn't film. Like I can never remember the name of it because it's a juvenile delinquency movie.
The Sinister Urge?
Not The Sinister Urge. He wrote it and then the credit for it was stripped away from him. It's not Untamed Youth. It's an MST movie, but it's like it's these girls and they're a girl gang, and then it ends with the main girl giving birth in jail and then dying for no reason, and it's like it's terrible.
And this was filmed or just it was never filmed, but it was written?
It was filmed. It's just his Ed Wood's name isn't on the screenplay, but it's definitely his work.
Reform School Girls?
That's not the name of it, but it could be.
I'll check it out. That's a great idea. Yeah, I don't really know who else.
Well, I'm also thinking about like the difference between a movie that would be an awesome read through, like the thing you did with Plan 9, and a movie that's sort of a classic, terrible movie that's tricky. Like if you did a dramatic reading of Showgirls, it would be amazing. Right.
You'd have to play it really straight. But so much of Showgirls, because we did think about Showgirls, so much of Showgirls is visual.
Yeah.
So much of Showgirls is what you're looking at.
Yeah. It's you've got to be very hysterical and visually too.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, because Plan 9 works, it's basically a radio play, the way we do it, with hilarious stage directions. Right. So yeah, that is that is one of my many little distracting side projects that I have right now that are keeping me from doing the thing that I'm being paid to do.
I'll let you know if I think of anything, because that's an interesting challenge.
Yeah, it is an interesting challenge. It's not as easy as you would think. We tried The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. Didn't really work.
That one depends on like 70s. I know about that movie that it's got this strain of sentimentality that's basically vanished from pop culture since the 70s. Mm-hmm. And so without understanding that context, it's just not as much fun.
Yeah. What would work is like a couple episodes of Dragnet.
Ooh.
Like but I don't know if that would that's tricky as a show. It's like Dragnet, it's like, what is it? They're 25 minutes. That's not really a show. You're doing 3, it's, but like, Blue Boy, Dragnet, Blue Boy would be fantastic. So when did you first become familiar with Plan 9?
That's a question that I don't know the answer to. I think that
That's
it was
not
during
possible.
I think that it was during my teenage years. My father bought all of these DVDs. Like when DVDs first started to be affordable, he just bought this giant collection of DVDs. And I know that Plan 9 was in there. I also know that when I watched it for the first time, I wasn't watching it expecting it to be a good movie. Aside from those criteria, I don't remember the first time I watched it. I wish I did, because that's not a very good story.
Mm-hmm. No, well, at least it tracks. At least it makes sense. I knew about it because I grew up reading Famous Monsters magazine. But it wasn't until, and my mother, oddly, would often reference Vampira, which is strange because we lived in Massachusetts, not Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But she was a national figure. She was in Time Magazine, Newsweek Magazine, Life Magazine, all around the same 2 months. And she appeared on like the Red Skelton Show and some national. So she was a presence.
But for like a minute, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was 1954. Yeah. If you blinked, you'd have missed it. But yeah, so I was always aware of it, and I would see stills of it in Famous Monsters. I don't believe it was until I moved to Boston, and then I watched it with Bobcat Goldthwait and Tom Kenny in that group. And they said, you really have to, it's like, and I think I probably pretended that I had, oh yeah, sure, Plan 9, and I hadn't really seen it. But right out of the gate, it's, and I wasn't as schooled in ironically bad movies then as I am now. Still, like right out of the gate, you're like, the acting is like, oh, wait, this is great. And then it just keeps going. And that's the brilliant thing about Plan 9 is that it always has something new. It doesn't, just when you think you're done, Eros shows up. And then just when you think you're done, Bunny Breckenridge shows up. Yep. And and that it's just, and then the interior set of the mothership, which is glorious. The two windows, one of which is dark and one of which is clouds, and they have no relation to what's going on outside. Oh, so good. Well, I have also it's a saucer with, but the exterior of the base has a right angle. Square. And on one of the saucers that I have over there, thanks to the great Bob Burns, I'll show it to you right now. That's all it is.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but no, this was in the movie.
And spray painted, I guess, or not.
There's the hole where the piano wire was, right there. See, and on the bottom you can see where the special effects company did glue a small square. See, to try to make it match. Like they cared more than Ed. But they. So
there's a question. Do you think Ed Wood didn't care or didn't think anyone would notice?
I know he cared. I don't think he felt anyone would notice.
Okay.
Also, he was likely drunk.
Sure.
Or if not drunk on liquors, drunk on excitement. And the euphoria of filmmaking, but that's all part of that's all part of the appeal of Ed. And you talk about this in the monograph. That is the magic of it that you don't see anywhere else. Like I don't get this like from Al Adamson movies or Herschel Gordon Lewis movies. I don't detect a grain of cynicism. And this is the thing that you really nailed, Plan 9 thinks it's good. They think they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
And you put that into words where I never could, but elucidate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I said that it was like watching little bitty kids play soccer, like watching them sort of toddle after the ball and kind of wander off to the edge of the field and chew on their fingers and like, aw, it's so sweet that they're trying to play soccer. And that's, I think, what Plan 9 is doing. It's like it's trying to be a movie, but it's so not. It's just, like I wrote in the book, it's a record of an attempt to make a movie. And
that's amazing.
like, I mean, I think that's what makes bad movies that are good to watch. I think that's what makes them good to watch, is that they're so clearly attempts, and you can't really fault them for trying. You can fault them a little bit for failing. But the attempt is sweet and fun to watch. And if you laugh at it, you're not laughing with cruelty.
Yes, and that's a huge part of it. And that's why, like, because you reference Mystery Science Theater a lot, and that they have a similar magic, and it's certainly something that we do in the live reading, is that there's no cynicism. There's no God, these people are jerks. It's like it's super positive, and it's very celebratory, I think would be a way to put it.
I mean, I think of it as engaged, that the people who are working with the movie at its level, as opposed to just poking fun at it. If you're thinking of it as an attempt instead of thinking of it as a failure.
It's a record of an attempt to make a movie.
Yes.
I can't put it any better than that. Because you compare it to Troll 2. Yeah. Which I enjoy.
Really?
Yeah.
It's so funny. When I finally saw Troll 2,
Is that the one with the coffee maker? Is that the one with the espresso machine? He steams a guy to death?
That does not sound familiar, but I haven't seen the movie.
That's in one of the
often.
that's no. I'm sorry. That's Leprechaun 2.
Oh, yeah.
I stand corrected.
I think you sit corrected.
Yeah, but I believe in Leprechaun 2, someone is steamed to death with a coffee maker, like an old timey copper.
To me, this is this is why I love slashers, is watching hilarious deaths, like in Sleepaway Camp when she's given a spinectomy.
Yes,
the killer is just like, I know, I'm going to completely remove your spine with this butcher knife. Like, I love stuff like that. I lost my train of thought.
I know you're talking about we were talking about.
Oh, it's Troll 2.
Yeah, Troll 2, and the lack of cynicism that you see in Ed's movies, and because again, it's something that you say in the thing, and I also give this to Al Adamson and Sam Sherman, that their movies are love letters to the movies that they truly love. Like, I know in Dracula vs. I know Sam Sherman loves movies, and that Sam Sherman loved that Lon Chaney Jr. was in his movie. Sam Sherman loved that, was it Lionel Atwill or somebody, that they would get these, John Carradine, they would get these actors, these classic actors in their movie. That you get that from the Ed Wood movies as well.
Absolutely.
And it's also an approach and a mentality that Mystery Science Theater has. I remember when Joel was interviewed on Fresh Air with Terry Gross, like, she kind of went at him for making fun of these movies, and Joel was flummoxed, because we love these movies. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about, we're not doing, this isn't, there's no, I know him very well. He's not a cynical person. There's about films.
Yeah. When I've read accounts of the various players in MST talk about this, it's very rare that they'll talk about, oh my God, we hated that movie.
Yeah.
It's once in a while they're like, ugh, we genuinely did not like that movie and we couldn't come up with good things to say about it. For the most part, it's like, oh man, what a treat. And I'm interested in this sort of loving or hating movies, because I'm thinking about, I read Graydon Clark's book. Graydon Clark, who directed Satan's Cheerleaders. Yes, Satan's Cheerleaders. Mm-hmm. And
nothing wrong with that.
And Uninvited, which was a sort of a cruise ship movie with a cat demon creature.
Really?
and Star Games, which for some reason had
I don't know Star Games. I know Star Crash.
No, it's not Star Crash. Star Crash is fun. Star Games is, he put his kids in it. He directed movies from the 70s all the way up to the 90s. And when he directed the Lambada movie that Golan Globus made.
Okay.
And that chapter was amazing. It was so entertaining. And so my point is to say he loves movies, but he loves movies in a 100% different way than I love movies.
Go on.
He loves the job of making movies, of being on the set and directing and figuring out how to solve the problem of where to put the camera and so forth.
I can relate to that.
But this is, to me, the reason that I love movies is for what they can show me aesthetically that I can't get in real life. And for him, it's about job. It's about work.
Yeah, Woody Allen, his problems aside, crimes.
His complete moral barrenness as a human being aside.
His mechanical immorality aside. He needs to make a movie. He needs to be on a set making a movie. And it's not like I think he writes a movie to make it. I don't think he waits for, like, you read about, like, Kubrick just tearing through material to find something that engaged him. Right. And if it took 5 years, it took 5 years. Like, Woody needs, I'm shooting in October. I don't know what I'm shooting in.
Right. It's like, to me, that's a very different mentality. Looking at movies as a kind of a product of a job, as opposed to looking at them as a product of art. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, or that one is more highfalutin than another, or anything,
sure, of course,
anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just, it's a completely different mindset for me. Like the difference between Terrence Malick spending 17 years not making a movie, and then and Woody Allen, I'm shooting in October. Like that's just so. Reading Graydon Clark's book was really illuminating in that way.
And Graydon, tell me the name of the book again.
He self-published it, so it's got this really long title.
Okay.
But his name is Graydon Clark, Greydon Clark.
Okay. And you were talking about the book Ed Wood, Mad Genius.
Yeah.
Which I want you to describe the book, but I'm going to I fulsomely reject his premise.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I do too. I was terrified when you began that sentence that you'd be like, I fully agree with him. No. So this gentleman who wrote it is named Rob Craig, and I give him all due respect for the research that he put into this book and the effort that he put into this book. But his belief is that Ed Wood is an artist, and that he is invoking Brechtian theater ideas and, like, absurdist theater with a capital A, as in Beckett theater. And I'm like, no, buddy. Like, no. That's not possible.
Yeah. Those are things that you can put on a thing after the fact. But that's not what was going on. In the same way, I just remember this from a documentary. I'm not that schooled in this, but there was a music critic that was talking about that there were Aeolian cadences and I Want to Hold Your Hand. And the Beatles like, I don't even know what that is. I've never heard of that before. I
think there's a difference. Yeah. I think there's a difference between, like, there's Freudian stuff in Lynch's movies, even if he's not, even if he says, I'm not a Freudian, or there could be these cadences in the Beatles songs that come from generations upon generations of music listening, and you get it imprinted in your brain. You know what a 3-act structure is, even if it's never been explained to you. But to think that Wood could have done this deliberately is, to me, just out of this world wild.
Yeah. I don't think he had those chops.
No.
But what he did have was exuberance and love. I mean, the thing about Plan 9, there's many things about Plan 9, but it makes me feel good when I watch it, because it is so affectionate and so positive. And it's also, and this is not to be underestimated. It's a monster movie and a science fiction movie. I mean, it's vampires, ostensibly, zombies, ghouls.
Zombies, ostensibly.
Yeah. And flying saucers. That's a legitimate idea.
Sure.
The idea behind the movie is like, yeah, that's an idea. That's an idea.
I think it's a little too Spider-Man 3. Like, let's put everything we can into this. But I respect the attempt. Like,
yeah. And it's also what it does, what it has that you also talk about is in typical of Ed Wood movies, which is why they're unlike any other movies. There will be narration about what someone is going to do. Then you will see the person do it, and the person will have dialogue explaining what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And like that overdetermination is one end of the spectrum, and then there's this like complete underdetermination of like the suggestion that they live in the San Fernando Valley and or Burbank, that's sort of worked around this in the screenplay as opposed to just stated outright. And he does both. It's very exciting that he does overdetermination and underdetermination in the same screenplay.
It is amazing. And so I remember showing Plan 9 to somebody who had never seen it, and their comment after was, did he not have friends that he could have them read this first?
I think they were all in the same, like, I think he convinced them all.
I've also met, I met Connie, I knew Mila Nurmi, I met Connie Brooks, I met Paul Marco, and, I think everybody was like, well, Mila knew what was going on. And that's why Mila had no dialogue. Mila was like, what if I didn't talk? And she was no dummy. Mm-hmm. But I think everybody else was like, this is great. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
we're working Wednesday. I think that's more than what it is. But the other weird thing is, it is visually quite beautiful. The shots of the shots of Mila are great. The cemetery and it looks like a cheap set, but it's a beautiful shot of a cheap set. You know what I mean? It's I find the color and the that weird scrim that the flying saucers fly against, that weird cumulonimbus cloud scrim, I find that all vaguely, strangely beautiful.
Huh. I've never thought of that before, just because to me it looks so much like a movie that was shot for $5 that I have a hard time thinking of it as beautiful. I see your point, because
it's beautiful in the way that the shags are beautiful. If you've ever heard the shags, it's like
I know about beautiful. The shags. But I think part of this is because for all of his faults, Ed Wood can light.
Yes,
like, he knows how to do lighting, and
or his colorblind cinematographer.
Sure. And I think he's not terrible at placing the camera. Like, he's okay at that. I don't think he's any good at shots where the camera is required to move in any way. But his framing isn't awful when it's still shots. It seems like he knows.
He can't choreograph a fight.
No, he can't block for shit, but he can definitely light a set.
Yeah. Again, I keep coming back to your original premise that it's a recording of an attempt to make a movie. I don't know if you can say anything else.
Well, that's so this book is part of a larger project that I'm doing on bad film. And in all of the films that I'm studying, that is sort of the central premise that I keep coming back to, is that all of these movies are records of attempts to make good movies. And whether they succeed or fail, usually they fail. And how they fail is in interesting ways. Like, I wrote about Cop Rock, which is a record of a record of an attempt to combine two genres that are very difficult to combine. For those not aware of it, it's a show that's a police procedural with musical numbers. It aired. Yeah,
and I can say, I remember when Cop Rock came out.
Yeah,
and it was one of those things of just like, how'd that? You get to a point where I think it was Stephen Bochco.
It was Stephen Bochco.
Yeah, where you can't say no to him.
Yep.
So you get cop rock.
So you get cop rock. And I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate that in terms of Hollywood history and kind of the history of television and how, in a Heaven's Gate kind of way. But I also...
I felt that way. I felt that way about the Wild Wild West movie. The movie, not the show. The show's weird.
No, the show,
brilliant.
sure.
Yeah. But the Wild Wild West of just like the only thing, once you get by the fact that there's a black guy who's a high-level government agent during the time of slavery, which I can't get past. So right out of the gate, I'm not going there.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe there are slightly bigger flaws in that film.
That was I haven't seen it. I couldn't get past that.
Fair enough. So the idea
and we didn't
is,
get Superman Lives because of that movie.
Yeah, but my understanding
maybe that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
My understanding of Superman Lives is that the producer, I don't remember who it was now.
John Peters.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I must be thinking of someone else then, because I thought it was Silver. Wanted a great big battle scene at the Fortress of Solitude, and Kevin Smith did a spec script, and he was like, but the Fortress of Solitude is there's no one there. That's why it's called the Fortress of Solitude. Like you can't have a fight scene at a Fortress of Solitude. The guy was like, no, we got to make this big set. It's got to be awesome. Like, no, buddy, it's.
Have you seen the documentary about the making of Superman Lives? Yeah,
No.
it's my friend made him. He's sadly since passed, but it's a very good documentary about how this supposedly giant production was going to happen, and then at the last minute, like Warner Brothers got cold feet on the money. And they said, we can make one or the other. And Will Smith's last movie made more than Tim Burton's last movie. So they made Will Smith's movie. They made Wild Wild West instead.
How quickly they forget the Batman money.
What have you done for me today?
Right.
I don't understand what you've done for me today. But so it was this big thing that never happened. On the other hand, and this is a great example of looking at Ed Wood thinking that he's doing Brechtian theatrical homages. My manager was an exec at Warner Brothers, was on Superman Lives, and said, yeah, they're going to make the movie. Kevin Smith wrote a script. Tim didn't really like it. The movie fell apart. That's what happens.
I mean, yeah, that's I kind of love those explanations as opposed to the sort of.
That's life,
Yeah.
Like what happened to JFK? Lee Harvey Oswald was crazy.
Shot him.
And he had a couple of great shots.
Yes. I think it's...
The vaccine will help you not get sick.
Fun, but so much
The vaccine will help you not get sick, and the government is not putting robots in your body because the government doesn't care that you stopped off at a titty bar on your way to the other titty bar. Doesn't care.
I have a friend who's a librarian, and I learned from her that being a librarian is a customer service job. It's not actually a book job. And
interesting.
She had to deal with this guy who had a serious mental illness. And he would come in and he would print things out on the computer. And then he would go to the front desk and say, I know that you are sending those printouts to the government. And she's like, sir, the printouts came to you. And he's like, I know that you have copies of my printouts in the back and that you're sending them to the government. And so she would just try to talk him down. It wouldn't work. And I said, well, why don't you just tell him that you only send Wednesday's printouts to the government? Today's Tuesday. And she was like, that's brilliant. And I was like, yeah, just go along with the conspiracy theory. That's the best way to placate.
No, I have people that used to be friends that are gone in the vax world and what it is a need to feel important. It's like all the militias that think that they're going to take down the government if they think their liberty's at risk. You need to feel important.
I lost my dad to Fox News, and
my whole family.
For him, it was a need to be right. It wasn't important so much because he'd had enough of that during his career, but the need to be just correct and on the right side. And I respect that, but when you get to bitterness, it goes too far.
Yeah, and life is complicated, and the whole thing can be summed up by I believe it's H.L. Mencken. For every complicated problem, there's a solution that is simple, easy, and wrong.
Maybe that solution is death.
Yeah, but it's just like, yeah, all that stuff, it doesn't work. The country's constantly changing. People are constantly different. Nothing stays gold forever, pony boy. I mean, sorry. That's the name of the game.
It's like a mashup of Robert Frost and a teen movie. I love it.
Yeah. So what are some of your other films that you're delving into on this?
Well, Cop Rock was a really fun essay to write because in that I wrote about the failure of genre and how Bochco understood cop shows, but he didn't understand what musicals are about.
That's interesting.
Yeah, just that because the idea of musical numbers is to express an emotion. And particularly to express a changing emotion. And none of the songs in Cop Rock do that. They're all plot songs.
Right. Did you get into I'll Say Anything on that?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I'll Say Anything was a James L. Brooks movie with Nick Nolte, and I know Albert Brooks is in it. And it started out as a musical. And Prince wrote the songs. And then they ended up taking all the songs out.
James L. Brooks made a movie that Prince wrote the music for.
Starring Nick Nolte, who would be singing the songs.
The 90s are so weird.
Yeah, and it's called I'll Say Anything. And it's Nick Nolte, Julie Kavner, Albert Brooks, all the great singing voices. And Prince wrote the songs, and then they ended up, I think there's one song in it, maybe.
Yikes.
But they ended up taking them all out. That's very interesting. You're not a musical guy, and it's like when I'll give you an example of a movie that's great to watch with the sound off.
Blade Runner.
Oh, I was going to say Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When directors that are not horror directors try to make a horror movie, Shutter Island being another example. Like, you don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
So you're trying to make it better than a horror movie. It's actually more important than a regular horror movie to make up for the fact that it's not really scary.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about that.
This is the environment.
No, I watched, it's funny because you talked about doing a podcast about the Warrens, and I watched The Conjuring for the first time the other night. And I thought it was maybe the most derivative movie I've ever seen. And that it was like sort of just barely over the line for a AAA film release. Like, it was just good enough, as opposed to being, really excellent. And what I think about it is, at a time when we've got directors like Ari Aster and, Mike Flanagan and other people working in very fine horror, showing us what the genre can do to make art. Like, you can't just do easy crap anymore. And the thing, the performances were so good, the acting was so high quality.
Yeah, they're real. Those are really good actors.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they know what they're doing. That I was angry that they were put in this sort of rehashed thing. On the other hand,
they're doing is, I can tell you what they're doing. What they're doing is called picking up a check. And it's also hard to tell if something is going to be good when you're making it.
I've heard that. Yeah.
I'm in a bunch of little movies, and they all kind of felt the same. And then they come out, and some are better than others. Yeah. It's just like,
yeah, you never know.
I didn't feel any different on the set of Mystery Men than I did on the set of Southbound, but Southbound's a really great movie. It's like.
So one of the essays that I haven't written yet is about showgirls.
Well, then it's not an essay, dear.
It's going to be in the book, Dana. Ugh, so rude. It's about
one of the women I haven't married yet is Charlize Theron.
Look, I'm a writer, okay? Writers write, but they also think for a really long time.
Believe me. Or as you can see. Or when they really have to write, they do laundry.
Yes. One of the essays that I have outlined is on, I want to do Showgirls and Staying Alive. I'm sure you know about Staying Alive, but I don't know that other people do. Yeah. And so both of these movies are about dance, but they're also both screenplays where all of the main characters are sociopaths.
Yes.
And you can't make a movie out of that because they all behave so unpredictably that it's like the conflicts don't make any sense.
Well, Staying Alive, for those of you who don't know, is the sequel to Saturday Night Fever. And Saturday Night Fever was a socio-cultural snapshot of stupid people in the 70s.
Yes, it was.
And it's really a 70s film. It really is a 70s film. It's like the 7-Up. If you want to know what it was like to live in Manhattan in 1973, watch the 7-Ups. If you want to know what it was like to live in Manhattan in 1976, watch Saturday Night Fever. And that's what it's like. And Staying Alive is Rocky, but instead of punching, he's dancing, but he's not really dancing.
Yeah, Staying Alive resembles no New York ever.
Yeah. And it's not about he only can make Rocky. Sylvester Stallone directed it, and he can only make Rocky.
It's true.
Which is great.
Can only make,
keep making Rocky.
Sure, but no.
By the way, First Blood 11, I fully approve. I might not see it, but go, baby. Go.
Well, but call it 11th Blood. I mean, be honest.
But I get it. Like, yeah, that's what that is. Go. John Wick 11, I will see it.
Well, that I'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the point of all this is to say each of the essays.
It doesn't know what it is. And now I'm going to get into No Time to Die.
Okay. I haven't watched it yet.
Okay. Well, then we can't talk about it. But
does it know that it's a Bond movie?
Not at all.
So a movie that teaches you something in the beginning and then goes back on that thing in the end is much more of a betrayal than a movie that is not what it's supposed to. So I'm saying this because
it's also cheating because a James Bond movie is not supposed to get heavy. And so when it gets heavy, it feels like, wow, that was amazing. It's not really amazing because it's in a cartoon. And I will liken it to Nanette. Because it was done under the auspices of a stand-up comedy special, it was really heavy, man. But if you put that in a theater without a microphone in front of you and just do it as a one-woman show, it's a very good one-woman show. It's like if I do a Shakespeare monologue at a car show, it's going to be amazing because it's at the car show.
I don't know, but I would argue that Gatsby has real talent as a comedian.
No, she does.
But
I'm not attacking her at all.
No,
I'm attacking the overpraise of it from cultural critics. I have no problem with Hannah, and I have no problem with Nanette. It was the way people. It was the way people said, like, all right, comedy's now over and this is it. It's like, no. The only thing that I'm knocking is the reflexive cultural criticism that can't praise something without shitting on something else. It's heavy drama the way Jim Morrison was a poet. Not really a poet. He's doing poetry on a rock album.
Yeah.
Nah, it's kind of a cheat.
What I'm trying to do with these different essays is write about the different ways that movies can be bad. So like Cop Rock fails through genre. Showgirls and Staying Alive fail by stuffing their screenplays with sociopaths in such a way that the conflicts don't make sense. Plan 9 fails at everything.
Right.
And through examining this, I mean, it's interesting the kind of the rabbit holes you go down into. I've learned a lot about the fans of bad movies, which I think is something you probably know a lot about too.
Uh-huh. Well, there's two kinds.
Okay.
Well, there's the MST world, which is positive, and then there's the snide, shitty world that I have no interest in.
I think that when people try to distinguish between these two worlds, it gets tricky. Like, I agree with you, but I also think that if you're going to distinguish between MST and, say, Red Letter Media, for some people the distinction is lost, and then what are you trying to say is kind of that comes up. And
I love the Red Letter Media guys. I mean, I think they do great. I think they do great stuff, and they don't. I think that there's what I meant was there are people that love movies that review them, and there are people that hate movies that review them.
I think that's true. I also think a lot of major movie critics hate movies and just don't know it.
Rex Reed.
Yes, absolutely. So I watched Joyride.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to tell you how much I loved your Coco Mr. Rogers bit. Oh, because there was an MST, or not an MST, there was a Riff Tracks recently that made a joke about Mr. Rogers having sex. And it was like, it was Kevin who did the joke, and then Bill was like screaming, no. I just like, I love that Mr. Rogers is like off limits for death and sex. Limits. It's like, you can't do it. And I admire you for breaking that vow.
Yeah, what happened was Robin Williams was, quote, friends of Coco and saw Coco several times. And if you've ever seen Robin without a shirt on, you can understand how a gorilla would think that he was a fellow traveler. And at one point, Coco signed something, and the people grabbed Robin and took him out of the room.
That was in the movie.
And they said that Coco wanted to bring you back into the enclosure. And you said, what would have happened? And they said, anything Coco wanted.
No bueno.
Joyride, talking about, the Hannah thing, I think Joyride also straddles that line where we do get into touchy subjects. Like, we talk about suicide a lot.
As I get older, the thing that I find about life is that the two things are always entwined. To me, the central thing about horror movies that makes them good is the way that sex and death are always intertwined.
Right.
And there's always grief and joy, and there's always these two opposing emotions or opposing forces that are wrestling against each other in order for life to occur. And I think that if comedy is moving in a direction toward being funny about death evermore, then I think that can only be good. I mean, because there's only so far that Henny Youngman can take you before.
Yeah, and it's always done it. And it goes back and forth. Like, they found a joke book that was passed around a concentration camp, written by the people there. Mm-hmm. And they wrote jokes and passed them around. And it's a coping mechanism that human beings do. They laugh at the thing they're afraid of or tragedy because it allows you to, as they say, it allows you to claim it, name it and claim it. You can laugh at it because it is all a joke.
It's just a ride.
Yeah, it is. And that was Bill, right? He had a short ride, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. But that's, I think that's a sort of, I guess, sentimental way to remember who it was, right? Because
we went to Disneyland. We went to Disney World together. Walking around Disney World with Bill Hicks is something that everybody should get to do.
I had a friend who went to Disney World on an overdose of LSD.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I was like trying to imagine. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah. All right. Yes. Or it would all balance out perfectly.
Yes.
I love Plan 9. Mm-hmm. And I love Ed Wood. And I put them together. But Ed Wood is perfect. And Plan 9 is also perfect in the completely opposite way.
Okay.
In the same way that, and this involves, like, to me, Franklin Schaffner's Planet of the Apes is perfect in the way that Tim Burton's is perfectly terrible, but not terrible in the Plan 9 way.
Yes. I've walked out of two movies in my life, and Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes was one of them. The other one was The Royal Tenenbaums, actually. And it's not a requirement to like protagonists, but
When I found out that Wes Anderson has his suits tailored a half size too small so they will look awkward on him, I was like, yeah, I know you.
so I hate to bring him up, but when I learned that Trump bought designer suits and refused to have them tailored, I thought that explained everything. So the point, as I understand it, the point of designer suits is that you have them tailored to you. Like, that's why Joe Biden always looks so dapper. But Trump would buy these very expensive designer suits and refuse to have them tailored, and that's why his suits look like shit. And I feel like knowing that just, like, it just made everything make sense.
Wow. Yeah. The suit's not right.
Well, just so that, because he didn't trust anyone to tailor his, like, he didn't trust anyone to touch his body like that. And he didn't understand that the moneyed class does that. But he wanted to be part of the moneyed class, so he bought the suits, but he didn't have the behavior to go with it.
Well, that's the perfect example of that. That sums him up well, which is he is a dumb person's version of a smart person, a weak person's version of a strong person, a poor person's version of a rich person.
Rich person, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But okay, so I'm trying to think of the answer to your question about movies because, like, I use movies different ways.
Like, they don't have to be great movies. Like, I unapologetically, like, it's so boring. I love the original Planet of the Apes. I love
it's a great movie.
Yeah, I love Ed Wood. I love Plan 9 from Outer Space.
So, but
they're not great. Do I love Citizen Kane? Yeah. Do I put it first? No.
It's boring.
I like Touch of Evil more. It's just like, it's like.
Well, so I use movies for different reasons. Like Neil Breen movies cheer me up when I'm sad because I will never be Neil Breen, thank God. Let's see. Mulholland Drive always makes me happy. Scorsese movies always make me happy.
Right. Now, do you find that Lynch and Scorsese, I enjoy all their movies, but I feel like they're just making the same movie? Especially Lynch. I feel like he's really making, and I guess Burton too, it's just like you just make the same movie over and over and over and over and over.
I see your point. I think.
And I'm a fan. I'm a fan. It's like.
I feel like, the band Belle and Sebastian?
Yeah, sure.
So their first 3 albums or whatever all sounded exactly the same. And critics were like, come on, do something different. And I was like, no, don't do something different. Like, just keep making the same album over and over. Because this is all I want, is variations on the same thing.
Yeah, I accept that. Yeah.
And that's how I feel about Fincher, too. Like, if Fincher made Mindhunter for the rest of his life, I would be so happy. And, like, it's okay that he doesn't really care about what women do at all in any way. It's fine, because the stories that he tells about men in men's worlds are so interesting that I'll watch them forever.
Now, Mindhunter is the show, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, no, everyone says it. It's just 3 kids and limited,
no, of course. I mean, the thing that I love about it is that one of the main
I can't watch anything before, if my TV is on before 8:30 at night. It's my daughter watching a Twilight movie. She just watches them and gets to the end of them and goes back and goes forward. And now she's also watching Gossip Girl.
Okay.
But those are, my car radio and my TV are not mine until late at night. But I know.
It will be again.
Yeah, I know a lot about. If you need to know anything about Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo, Dua Lipa, Doja Cat, I can tell you. Tay-Tay's life is. I
mean, I've been listening to way too much Taylor Swift lately.
No one knows about Taylor's pain. No one. We'll never know. We'll never know how deep Taylor feels.
I disagree. I think literally everyone knows about Taylor Swift's pain.
I want this true story. I was at the Vanity Fair Oscar party, a high-end party, and I walked out of the bathroom into an argument between Taylor Swift and Jake Gyllenhaal.
And now everyone knows the 10-minute version of that argument.
Mm-hmm. I was right in the middle of them.
I'm sorry. That must have been really hard for you. You should write a song about it, I think, so that everyone knows about the pain of being in the middle of that argument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Mindhunter. So the main character of Mindhunter is a guy who is all of us who love serial killers, but know that it's unhealthy to love serial killers as much as we do.
Say
so it's
that again,
great
'cause you
how,
broke up.
This guy echoes all of us watching this show with great fascination. That's part of why I loved it so much.
But no, tell it to me again. It's about a guy.
Sorry. The main character of Mindhunter is this guy who loves serial killers unapologetically, but also knows that it's not necessarily healthy to love serial killers this much. And so he kind of has to back off of, like, he's like fanboying over meeting Charles Manson. And
Really? But he's an FBI profiler?
He's kind of inventing, like, the premise of the show is that this is the invention of profiling. And so he's really excited about meeting these killers and talking to them and learning from them. And I love how that echoes those of us watching the show who are like, yeah, serial killers, but we also know that it's really not okay to be that enthusiastic about serial killers. Like, we're decent people, we swear. It's just, like, fascinating.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll have to. Is it 2 seasons or?
I think so. I mean, I burned through it in like a day. The episodes are an hour long. Right. And yeah, it is 2 seasons because the second season kind of loses some magic, but I really loved it.
I do. I really admired Zodiac in the sense that it didn't really have an ending.
Neither does the Zodiac Killer story.
Yeah,
like
right.
That's why I loved
it. They think they just found him actually.
Yeah. Sure.
Supposedly passed away, but yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, that was, but to take on that story is.
I mean, that's something that I really loved about that movie. And that I have a friend who's kind of, like, I hate to say it this way, but he's kind of apprenticing with movies. And so he'll watch a movie and come to me and be like, okay, what was going on with this? And when he saw Zodiac, he was like, Kat, that was so unsatisfying. What the hell? And I was like, well, why was it unsatisfying? And he told me all the reasons. And I was like, and what does that resemble? And he was like, oh, the form of the movie is imitating its content. And I was like, yep, that's what it's doing. Well done, Daniel.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. So, Mulholland Drive, you're right. Someone's listening and, they're not very literate movie wise. And you're going to give them some recommendations of some movies to have a Katharine Coldiron holiday.
Oh,
what are they watching?
They're going to have a really depressing holiday. If they want to start understanding how awesome the past was, start with The Apartment by Billy Wilder, 1960. If they want to be,
because of its progressive view towards women.
No, because of its running jokes. Because it has this sort of delightful. Continuous series of jokes that run along. Not progressive. Let's see. I would not watch Citizen Kane.
If you're a cinematographer, you can watch
yes.
Citizen Kane.
And if you're beginning a long journey into learning about film and film history, watch Citizen Kane.
Yeah. I mean, Citizen Kane is like, to me, it's like Quadrophenia, the album.
Okay.
It's like, once you know the Who and you like that, you really want to go there, Quadrophenia. But
sure.
Nobody just puts it on.
Yeah.
Actually, I know one person that Bobcat Goldthwait just puts on Quadrophenia.
Well, that's not with his persona at all. I would say Night of the Hunter by Charles
very
Lawton.
Good. Very good.
I adore that movie. And
is she really, now that's an effect. She's not underwater, correct? Is that somebody said that's a weird effect. The car.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised either way. I don't know.
Yeah. It's the only movie. He only directed one movie.
Only one movie. I mean, I think they treated him not well.
Yeah. You just didn't want to know part of it.
If you want to sort of start learning about more experimental film, I would watch Meshes of the Afternoon by Maya Deren, which is 1945. And it's a short film. It's very beautiful and super interesting. if you want to know how to tell a story, watch The Twilight Zone, the original.
Yeah, sure. Or Dragnet. I'm not lying.
Very linear.
Very linear, but they move like a freight train. Mm-hmm. They move like a freight train.
If you want to be really surprised, Black Sunday. Because
the blimp movie or the Mario Bava movie?
No, the blimp movie. Because I saw that and I was like, oh my God, this is like 2.5 hours long and it's about terrorism and blah. But it's so good. I was shocked at how good it is. And have to say, Suspiria. Just
oh sure. If you want to do them, if you just like I don't know what kind of movie it is, as long as there's a room of razor wire, I'm happy.
As long as there's bizarro wallpaper and primary colors everywhere. And if you want to watch probably my very favorite bad movie ever, Deathbed, The Bed That Eats. Which I'm unfamiliar with Deathbed. Well, so Patton Oswalt made fun of it, and he was wrong to do so because it's a great movie. It's a no budget movie about a killer bed, and it is the shit. It's so good.
I'll write this down. Deathbed, The Bed That Eats.
Yep.
Today I will be writing about Blood Freak, the world's greatest turkey-based horror film. BASED. Not BASTED.
Not Thanksgiving.
No, Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving is not a movie I love. It's like a little too gross.
There's your headline.
It's kind of grody, and it's also kind of like the turkey is horny, which is very fucked up. But it's
killing.
Yeah, but it's about a killer turkey, and like the number of Thanksgiving horror movies is very low, so we got to go with what we got.
Yeah, here's one that's not been made yet, but we could do it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Pilgrim.
Okay.
Killer pilgrims.
Is it like a golem made of OxyContin?
I just came up with it.
No. Okay, then I say golem made of OxyContin. Pilgrim.
Oh, see, I was going to pilgrim, but really hitting the grim.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right, when you're going.
But see, it's 2 levels, Dana. It works on 2 levels. Pilgrim, right. Pill, grim.
Grim, right. The thing about OxyContin is I believe it constipates you.
That's grim.
So that could be part of it.
Okay.
Everybody could go out like Elvis, just impacted to death.
Oh, no.
The most American death.
This is shaping up. I like this.
The most American death. Why did he die? Because he was full of shit. A very American death. So when does the Plan 9 monograph get published?
I think that Amazon is actually having trouble keeping it in stock because I keep promoting it the moment it's in stock, and that means that Amazon, I'll promote it on a Riff Tracks group, and it'll just all the copies are gone. So the best place to get it is to order it directly from my publisher, which is pspublishing.co.uk. I also have enough copies that you can buy some copies from me, and I will sign them if people order them directly from me.
Okay.
And yeah, so the book did not have a very specific release date, but copies have been printed and are shipping.
Well, it's a great read. I've read the book. I want the book. And it's part of a series called
Midnight Movie Monographs.
It's such a great idea.
Well, and the books in the series are amazing. There's one on The Brood. There's one on Fire Walk with Me. There's one on there's a couple on British horror films that I'm not aware, but there's one on Tommy. Like it's a great series.
Yeah, no. Is there a link to where you can get these?
Yeah, that's also on PS Publishing's website.
What is the name of that website? Because I'm going to get the Fire Walk with Me one because that movie vexes me.
It's pspublishing.co.uk.
pspublishing.co.
Yep.
.uk.
And in terms of the Fire Walk with Me one, it's you can just call me if the book doesn't answer your questions, which I'm not sure it will.
Well, I saw that movie opening night. I was a ginormous Twin Peaks fan, and I walked out of that movie and I turned to my friend who I saw it with and said, go fuck myself. What?
See, the more I have watched it, the more I love it. Like, if I watch it, I've watched it so many times now that I kind of know its nooks and crannies. And so I kind of lean into what doesn't make sense and what does.
Well, just to me, it was what I loved about Twin Peaks. It had my two favorite things dialed in. Could be super scary and creepy and hilarious.
Okay.
And the comedy was such a huge part of it. Not in the second season when they were going for jokes, but just Dale. Dale was funny.
He's the whitest face for the reddest. Yeah.
Right. The table full of donuts. That stuff is funny. Every day, give yourself a little treat. Maybe you see a shirt in the men's store. Just that stuff. Mwah. Chef's kiss. Fire Walk with Me. Instead of funny, what about incest? Huh? No.
I respect this.
No.
I think it is. I respect what you're saying. I think it is a greater work of art, but I know just what you mean.
Could be. But you tricked me into seeing it. It's like, this wasn't you. I bought cornflakes and then I opened it up and there's gravy.
Oh, there's something about that in my book about how when you violate audience expectations, that's trouble. But it's the same thing as, Twin Peaks taught you how to watch Twin Peaks. And then when you see the movie, it's like, oh, this is a whole different thing.
Yeah. I would put No Time to Die in the Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me category of this isn't what I was signed up for.
Bummer.
But anyway, it's Plan 9 from Outer Space. The monograph is really it's not just about that movie. It's great about why we love bad movies and what makes a good bad movie versus a bad movie. And the best place to go is Amazon or PS Paul Sam pspublishing.co.uk.
It's holiday time, and Beauregard cries, "Hey, look, there's a snowman ringing our doorbell." And Elsie says, "That's no snowman. It's Elmer with a surprise. Borden's Eggnog, the extra special holiday drink. Borden's, very big on flavor."
Wow, Borden's Eggnog. Now we can have a party.
Borden's Eggnog is the delicious holiday treat the whole family loves, right from the carton. It's made with lots of eggs, milk, and real sweet cream. Rich and creamy, better than the best milkshake you ever tasted. Borden's, very big on flavor. This is the only time of year you can get it. So ask Mom for Borden's Eggnog today.
They're true tales from Weirdsville. Tales from Weirdsville. And they're true.
Can your heart stand the shocking facts?
What defines a Christmas movie? To some, it's any movie about Christmas, any Hallmark movie about Christmas. To others, it is any movie set during Christmas. To that end, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Batman Returns, an underrated movie, by the way, if you look at it not as a Batman movie, but a parody of German Expressionism. That's a whole other story, and we'll get into that in due time. But to me, it's a Christmas movie because it's set during Christmas. To me, any movie that evokes a Christmas feeling is a Christmas movie. Any movie with snow in it. For me, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is a Christmas movie. Fargo is a Christmas movie. And the granddaddy of them all, John Carpenter's The Thing, is a Christmas movie. John Carpenter's The Thing is, for my dollar, the greatest monster movie ever made. It is widely considered a classic. one of the best. And of course, when it was initially released in theaters, people hated it. The story itself began in the mind of writer John Campbell under the title Who Goes There? Who Goes There tells the story of an alien spaceship that is discovered under the ice by a group of men stationed at an Arctic base. The men find the ship's pilot frozen in ice and bring it back to their base, and immediately kills one of the men, and then copies him, assuming his identical shape, voice, and personality. Unfortunately, after assuming the man's identity, there is some space creature left over, so it also kills and transforms into one of the team's sled dogs. The dog version of the thing is discovered before its transformation is complete, and the men know they have serious trouble on their hands. Once the thing version of their fellow crew member is discovered, the realization settles in on the survivors that the thing must, at all costs, be prevented from reaching civilization. In a seriously creepy sequence, the men have to quietly destroy all of the vehicles at the camp, while at the same time radioing in their reports and pretending that everything is normal to ensure that there will not be any rescue attempt. Who Goes There was first made into a movie in 1951 under the title The Thing from Another World. The Thing was produced by none other than Howard Hawks and directed by Christian Nyby, although rumor has it that when Hawks was on the set, he directed the movie and he was on the set a lot. The Thing from Another World dispensed with the concept of the creature assuming the identity of its victims, which is odd because it was made in 1951, at the height of the Cold War, and that was such a trope for science fiction films in that era. This would be done to perfection 5 years later in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, based on Jack Finney's 1955 novel, The Body Snatchers. But John Campbell got there first. The alien in The Thing from Another World is basically Frankenstein in a spacesuit, a big goon played by a young actor named James Arness, who would later find fame as Marshal Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke. The film did well on its release, and even if it didn't have the "my friend may not be who I think he is" paranoia of many Cold War science fiction films, it does end with one of the great Cold War warnings.
Tell the world. Tell this to everybody wherever they are. Watch the skies everywhere. Keep looking. Keep watching the skies.
We flash forward to 1981. Director John Carpenter is coming off a string of hits. Carpenter's first major film was the 1974 horror comedy Dark Star. That was followed by 1976's Assault on Precinct 13, which was heavily influenced by the film Rio Bravo, directed by, guess who, Howard Hawks. Carpenter wrote and directed his next film, which was a made-for-TV thriller starring Lauren Hutton called Someone Is Watching Me. He also wrote the spec script Eyes that would become the Irvin Kershner film The Eyes of Laura Mars. It was Carpenter's next movie which blew the doors off the joint. Originally titled The Babysitter Murders, producer Irwin Yablans suggested it take place on Halloween. This would become the film's theme and title. 1978's Halloween. The film tells the story of Michael Myers and his love of stabbing. It cost about $300,000 and grossed about $65 million, and that is in 1978 monies. Now, many people think that Carpenter's next film was The Fog. Twarn't. It was another made-for-TV movie, a biopic of Elvis Presley called Elvis, starring Kurt Russell as the king of rock and roll. Then came The Fog, another hit, followed by the wicked excellent Escape from New York, again starring Kurt Russell, this time as Snake Plissken. Snake's job is to rescue the President of the United States, played by Halloween's Donald Pleasance, who has crash-landed in New York City. Oh yeah, New York City in the film is now a giant prison. Your joke here. Regardless, Escape from New York is incredible, and it has a deservedly large and loyal fan base, me among it. Okay, so now it's about 1980, 1981. Now, what we think of as the 80s hasn't really hit yet. Culturally, we're still in the 70s. Reagan has been president for about a year, but the pop cultural 1980s, as we know them, the night flight 80s, hasn't started yet. After 3 hits in a row, John Carpenter has a little bit of freedom, and what he chooses to do is a remake of The Thing from Another World. Now, a remake of the film has been in development at Universal for some time. When it was first brought to Carpenter, he was wary about it. He's a huge fan of Howard Hawks, and he didn't think he could surpass the master. However, after reading the original novel, Who Goes There?, Carpenter became interested in the concept of the alien's ability to copy and replace its victims, and found, as they say, a way into the film. A way in that would let him tell a different story than the Howard Hawks Christian Nyby original. The film was written by Bill Lancaster and starred Carpenter's old buddy, Kurt Russell, in addition to Wilford Brimley, Keith David, and others. There are no women in The Thing. It is, as they say, an all-male feature. But make no mistake, the real star of The Thing is The Thing. This coming summer, The Thing will be 40 years old, but the movie itself, with the exception of 1 or 2 oldie-timey computers, is basically ageless. The special effects, far from being quaint and dated, are still absolutely mind-blowing and still 100% believable. For this you can thank 3 things. The Thing was made before the advent of CGI, so all of the effects are practical. They look real because they are real. The effect sequences were storyboarded by the great comics illustrator Mike Ploog, and he brought so much imagination and inventiveness to the sequences. And finally, they were designed and executed, with 1 or 2 exceptions, by a brilliant young makeup effects man named Rob Bottin. The Thing's initial designs were done by a man named Dale Kuipers, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name. And he came up with the concept that you would never see the same thing twice. To Kuiper's mind, it was an intergalactic Lon Chaney Sr., the man of 1,000 faces. Carpenter loved Kuiper's concepts, but as pre-production got underway, Kuiper was injured in a car accident and sidelined for several months. Carpenter then turned to Rob Bottin, with whom he had worked on The Fog. Bottin, at this point, was only 21, 22 years old. He was a big fan of Kuiper's work, but he felt he could improve on it. He said in a later interview, Dale had come up with something that was a lot better than Alien's facehugger. But it was basically a big bug. In a match cut, the dog or whatever would explode, and then there'd be this big bug sitting there, and it would go off and do its destruction. But to me, because of the title, I expected it to be more like a thing. Bottin pitched Carpenter his ideas for The Thing. They were so outlandish that Carpenter actually took a day to think about it before offering Bottin the job. He did, and he did. In an interview with Cinefantastique magazine, Bottin explained his rationale behind the creature's design, and also gave a hint to their rather unflappable approach to some of the film's more jaw-dropping sequences. This is the quote: "Since it has been all over the galaxy, it could call upon anything it needed whenever it needed it. Like when the guy's stomach splits open and changes into a big mouth and bites the guy's arms off. If you think about it, it's logical. The doctor is bugging him and he's trying to play possum. What's it gonna do? The best thing is just let the guy fall in and bite his arms off." Credit where credit is due. Simply because of the staggering amount of effect shots that Bottin was responsible for, a few of them were farmed out. The famous dog kennel sequence, for example, was done by the late, great Stan Winston. Filming for The Thing began in the summer of 1981. The interiors were all shot on the Universal lot. However, the interiors were supposed to be set in the Arctic. and people had to dress accordingly, and they had to look cold, and you should see their breath when they talked. But it was summer in Los Angeles, and it was one of the hottest summers on record. So the sound stages were air-conditioned below freezing, and then the actors would walk out into 100-degree heat. After the interiors were shot, production moved to the top of a snowbound glacier in Stewart, British Columbia. John Carpenter's The Thing is widely considered a masterpiece of horror cinema. And when Universal previewed the film for audiences, the scores were fantastic. According to John Carpenter, they were his best preview scores since Halloween. The film was slotted for a June 25th release. But when it was released, critics hated it, and audiences did not respond. So what happened? What happened 2 weeks prior to The Thing's release, on June 11th, 1982.
E.T. Home phone.
E.T. phone home.
Decades are eras, but they don't run on the calendar. What we think of as the pop cultural 1960s did not start on January 1st, 1960. Really, what we think of as the pop cultural 1950s, well, that didn't start on January 1st, 1950 either. What we think of as the 1950s, the Happy Days 1950s, that's basically 1956 to 1963. To use some pop cultural milestones, the era began with the arrival of Elvis Presley and ended with the departure of John F. Kennedy. The 1960s started 3 months later, in February of 1964, when the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan. Now those are my metrics, and they're open to debate, but you get the idea. They say the 1960s ended at Altamont, and if that's true, fine. I think that the 1970s ended on June 11th, 1982, when E.T. opened. Reagan was in the White House, and Americans wanted to ignore their problems and pretend that everything was great for a while. And boy, oh boy, nothing gave people the warm fuzzies more than E.T. And I would know. I was an usher at a movie theater and a drive-in that summer. I saw every movie 100 times, and let me tell you, nobody wanted to talk about anything but E.T. Premiering 2 weeks after E.T. opened, fun fact, Blade Runner was released the same day, to equal indifference. Critics looked at John Carpenter's The Thing and ripped it apart. The New York Times, as Vincent Canby said, it was foolish and depressing. It qualifies only as instant junk. Roger Ebert called it a barf bag movie. Starlog, which was a science fiction magazine for Christ's sakes, and should have known better, said, quote, John Carpenter's The Thing smells, and smells pretty bad. It has no pace, sloppy continuity, zero humor, bland characters on top of being devoid of either warmth or humanity. The Thing arrived too late, or too early. It certainly should not have arrived at the dawn of the candy-colored 1980s. The Thing is a 1970s film. In its nihilism, and in its initial release, it suffered from the E.T. backlash. Aliens didn't turn their chest into a mouth and bite your arms off. They ate Reese's Pieces, and they made your bike fly. It was only in the ensuing years that The Thing and Blade Runner found their audience on home video, as the giddy optimism of the early 80s gave way and people came back down to earth. Both The Thing and Blade Runner were the subjects of critical and audience reappraisal. They are also, in their production and costume design, pretty much timeless. Whereas the top two grossing picks of 1982, E.T. and Rocky III, are very, very much tied to the year they came out. Certainly the era they came out. All my opinion, of course, but I would know. I was an usher.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
No, really, I was.
And now, on with the show.
You know, it's the holiday season, and thoughts turn to gift giving, what better gift to celebrate the birth of Christ than the story of the conquest of heaven by Satan? All because I think even Jesus would have to say, you want to make God laugh? Tell him your plans. He actually said that on the cross. The man I'm interviewing today has written such a book. It is the Encyclopedia of Hell, Volume 2, The Conquest of Heaven, the sequel to the Encyclopedia of Hell, Volume 1.
That's correct.
And you and I, we have traveled in the same circles for decades.
That's true.
We have all of the same friends.
Come from the same place.
Come from the same place. And yet you have assiduously avoided becoming my friend personally. I find that fascinating.
How interesting.
Yeah. Please welcome your friend, apparently not mine, Martin Olson.
Thank you very much, Dana.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the conquest of heaven.
And I have a bit of a cold, so excuse my.
That's quite all right. It is just a cold.
Yes.
We are both in speaking in oxygen tanks. The book, the title of the book is The Conquest of Heaven, the Encyclopedia of Hell, Volume 2, published by our good friends at Feral House.
Yeah, man.
They're great. A demonic history of the future concerning the celestial plane and the angelic race which infests it. Translated from the demonic and the angelic by Martin Olson. So what this isn't is you didn't sit down and go, you know what, I'm going to write just a piffle. This is.
I was a man on a mission, but this is.
Yeah. I would describe this as it's hilarious, but it's also Tolkien-esque, and it's
definitely a world building
in your world building. Yes,
but I pitched it as a trilogy, so the third book is
Assignment Miami Beach.
Kind of. It's after the heaven gets destroyed, and Satan, who's taken over heaven, God is retired.
Yeah,
there's no way to beat God because everything's made out of him.
Right.
But he's just a personified being. There is no God.
I think even that will give people a sense of the depth of the depth of the piece. I would suggest getting Conquest of Heaven Volume 1.
Yeah.
Which
is just a joke book with a story attached.
They're both hilarious. And there are amazing illustrations by Tony Millionaire and Mahendra Singh also.
And Celeste Marino.
Yeah, it's really...
it's a history book from the future, so it's different than the first book.
But what it reminded me of was it reminded me of the National Lampoon in the density.
Yeah, that's true.
And the depth of the work.
That was where I learned.
Yeah, of course. Like even as something as unrelated as O.C. and Stiggs, but the density of the world building is there, you know? We're both from Massachusetts, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I'm from Littleton near Concord.
Right. And I'm from Hopedale near Worcester. Mm-hmm. Those are like night names. I am from Littleton near Concord. I am from Hopedale near Worcester. And you were there at the birth of the Boston comedy scene. I came a little bit later.
Yeah.
But we know all of the same people. And you lived at a place that by the time I moved to Boston and was doing stand-up had a bit of lore around it called the Barracks.
Yeah. Barracks was my home. So it was me, Lenny Clark, Mike Clark, Barry Nightkrug. And
these are just the old guard, first tier Boston stand-up comedy.
And Kenny.
Kenny Rogerson, one of the funniest human beings on the planet.
Best joke writer.
Yeah.
I still haven't cracked the case on on his mindset, on the brain wiring for his jokes.
He taught me how to do the stuff that I thought was funny.
Huh.
Because I had a dark sensibility as well, but I couldn't.
Oh, I remember.
Translate it well. Yeah. But seeing Kenny, it was like, oh, you can do that. Like, and it took a while to dial in on.
I think the only thing that I have to dial in on it is he had a character.
Yeah.
That he would zone in and out of, a dummy laughing at something, joke twists around on him.
Right.
That's the only real insight I got it, but he wouldn't be consistent with that. Sometimes it just would be one-liners. A powerful joke writer, I guess is what you'd say.
Yeah. Well, he just says the last time I saw him a couple months ago, and he said, again, it was just casually, these people that like, they're not giantly famous, but they are as
Giantly
funny.
influential.
Giantly influential. They're like the Velvet Underground of stand-up comedians.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. I'll give you two examples of this. Our friend Kevin Rooney, who I went to visit him the other day, he's recovering from some stuff, and the TV was on, and we were just kind of talking casually, and there was a commercial for like Denny's, and it was just, like a picture of like 8 metric tons of scrambled eggs being put on a plate and a World Trade Center of pancakes. And he just casually was, and then in Nigeria, that's a science fiction movie. Just like is an afterthought.
I love it.
Yeah. And the last time I saw Kenny, he said, I'm on my 4th laptop of the year, He goes,
right away, it's funny.
Yeah, he goes, these computers today, they can do anything except defend themselves.
That's like a classic.
That's Kenny. So I was just imagining what it must have been like Boston in late 70s. Late 70s, early 1980s.
Yeah, we had no comedians, so there were gong shows though.
Right.
Bruce Smirnoff had the only gong show in Boston that I knew of. And so I went and tried to sell him jokes. I just didn't know how to write jokes. I had previously tried to send jokes because I had first wanted to be a comedy writer when I was about 12, when I saw Brother Theodore on Merv.
Right. And people know Brother Theodore. He really kind of became nationally famous on Letterman.
Right.
But he'd been around forever. He was a beatnik, sort of like a beatnik personality.
Letterman kind of curated guys like him and Johnny Dark.
Yeah.
People hadn't seen the dark side of some of these guys. In fact, Johnny Dark used to have kind of a light, frothy act.
Yeah, that's how I know him.
And shit.
Yeah.
And then he did the Letterman stuff, which was as cutting and as satirical as you can get. So Brother Theodore was on the Merv Griffin show. The first time I saw him was, and I'll never forget it because it's when I said, I want to do this. I'll figure this out. And now Brother Theodore, and Merv Griffin named him that, by the way. His name is Theodore Gottlieb.
Right.
And he was in a concentration camp.
Yeah, I did a deep dive on him on this podcast. He was from a wealthy family.
Oh, they were rich.
And they lost every publishing, I believe, or catalogs.
Yeah.
Like fashion catalogs, and they lost everything to the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Einstein intervened.
Yes.
So
because his mother was having an affair with Einstein.
Yes, they loved each other. So and then when Theodore came over to New York, he became a chess freak and a chess con man.
Right.
And then he worked as a janitor at Einstein's college, which was the biggest fucking college, whatever it was.
Yeah.
At any rate, then he started doing these shows. And you already know the whole story. It's astounding.
But it is amazing. And he's one of those people that I'm very envious of, people like Theodore and Paul Rubens, of just like having a three-dimensional character that lives in its own world that you can take out and play with and then put away and just be yourself. I always wanted to do that and I never did.
Well, Spike Jones had that, but he had a whole group playing himself.
Sure.
Andy Kaufman, of course, had a whole group inside himself playing that.
Yeah. Bobcat kind of did it.
Bobcat totally did it.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah. He completely did it. And they put it aside. I was urging him to put it aside for years, though, because it was inevitable. It would be it would get old.
Yeah.
Albert Brooks and Steve Martin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Steve Martin, definitely. Well, that was the thing. In the 80s, there was a time in stand-up, actually, our friend Stephen Wright.
Who's the greatest, by the way? The greatest person.
Yeah. But when he broke, it was the birth of, you need a character. And what people didn't realize was, Steve, it's not a character.
No, that was born of, it was like Woody Allen, which was born of nervousness of grabbing the mic and being terrified.
That Stephen isn't affecting much.
The pauses were a result. The pauses were the fuel of the character, the nervous pauses, or the seeming spaced out pauses, but those were real.
Yeah. But that was the birth of, and then, but then in the 80s, there was a period where like every comedian was like, Dr. Nervous is here, like Liz Winstead used to call him Pete Pantherman Peters. It's just like, it was always, everybody had a goofy character, Dr. Bob.
Well, then came the Richard Pryor movie, and it changed everything. I remember going out with all the guys in Boston to see that, and every single person turned against anything to do with props or anything aside from a guy with a mic.
The first one live in concert?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big game changer, I think, in every comedy community.
Yeah.
Which was a bad thing, by the way, because total freedom is the solution, not only one thing is
right,
good.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's like, we're going to be free. Now we're all going to be free in this way. Right.
But I mean, we're all insane. And that's a beautiful thing to think about, by the way, that type of a.
I can see how it influenced Lenny in the way that they both hold in the way they both hold the microphone.
What do you mean?
They both hold the microphone in a very jazz flautist kind of way. Like their fingers, they're holding the microphone, but they're also moving their hand and gesturing a lot. And Lenny does that a lot with the microphone, or used to in 1983.
Shit. I got to look for that because I certainly didn't notice, but here's what I did notice. Lenny used to be a surrealist.
Yes.
Did you see those shows?
I saw Lenny Clark's Late Show. I was in high school.
Well, then he wrote that. He and I wrote that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But he, and we were in heaven because we could do a half hour of anything we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Good or bad, Lenny used to take people outside of the club way before Steve Martin. He used to do all that shit.
Right, yeah. He was, the fact that he was.
puppet shows, he used to bring great props all the time.
Yeah.
He used to hypnotize the crowd. It just was the
funniest
shit ever. Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
he had a turban.
Oh my God. It was the funniest shit ever because you never knew what he would do.
Well, that was the thing about Lenny and Kevin Meaney.
Oh my God, Kevin Meaney.
The stage was irrelevant.
Yeah. Kevin Meaney didn't care about getting laughs, very much like Jeremy Kramer.
Mm-hmm.
And Meaney's, although he denied it vehemently, was doing a satire of a stand-up act, but he was saying no, that he was. I said, Kevin, you're wearing a fucking red jacket and your bow tie.
Yeah. Well, he's dressed like Danny O'Day.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Bobcat.
Also, I said, Kevin, you have no material. It's a joke act.
Yes.
He said, no, this is an actual stand-up act.
But people didn't realize that, Bob's act was a parody of a stand-up act.
Oh, plenty of people realize that.
But I mean, like,
they were too scared. They were too scared to know.
Yeah, or the fact.
Oh,
that
you're right.
Like Seinfeld specifically, who takes such great umbrage. All those guys took such umbrage at it. It's like, well, of course you're not going to like it. It's a parody of you. It's like Mel Torme and Johnny Rotten probably don't get along well either. They both do the same thing for a living.
Unless Johnny Rotten beat him up.
Yeah. It was a strange, Boston in the 80s, that whole was really crazy.
How beautiful that the Christ-like character, which is Steve Wright, emerged as the superstar goal of everything, setting the fire.
Yeah. At the very beginning too. And the least prototypical of what was going on at that time.
Is that true? Who else did one-liner stuff with a character?
Barry Nykrug a little bit did weird characters, but it wasn't that sort of.
In Boston. I'm sorry, I thought you meant overall.
No, I meant in Boston. Like it was.
Of course, it was totally unique. Nobody was doing it. Absolutely.
Plus, because of my manager, Peter LaSalle was in Boston looking at Harvard University for his son Tom LaSalle.
I praise his name every day.
Who is now my manager?
You're kidding?
Yeah.
How great?
Yeah. That's why it was. That's how it happened. Yeah.
How wonderful for you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great because he was at the heart of comedy.
Yeah.
During the
Still
whole.
around.
Oh my God.
Still here.
Well, God bless him.
Yeah. Not running any marathons.
Yeah, but I mean that's history.
Yeah. It's truly amazing, but it's also when you experience this too, is like that era is something that we both remember.
Oh, we were so lucky.
But it is now as antiquated as the Wild West. Like people don't think that way anymore. They can't behave that way anymore. It was truly
let's put it a different way.
Crazy.
Of course, it's antiquated because it's old, but everything is cyclical. It's hard to remember. Things fade in and out. Stupidity it's always going to. We're all stupid.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be waves of more stupidity and less. More stupidity and less.
I agree.
Over and over and over again. And that's just the way it is because we don't even know why we're here or what this is about.
Right. Well, that's one of the premises of The Conquest of Heaven, not the Encyclopedia of Hell, Volume 1, Taking Over the Earth. You find out too late the Earth's already been taken over. We're like, oh, well, that makes sense. That was like a Planet of the Apes reveal. Oh, of course it's Earth. Of course it's Earth.
So let me tell you about the third book about this, just to wrap it up, because the idea of the purpose of this was, first of all, with the first book, believe it or not, Dana, I'm not kidding. I was so naive, but I actually wanted to do it because you're not going to do it unless you try. I was trying to write the funniest book ever.
Right.
So for the first book, I literally was trying to do that. So it was 4 times as long as it is now because I didn't know how to write jokes. I had to figure it out.
Right. And telling jokes and writing jokes are very different.
Oh, my God.
I always love when a stand-up comedian writes something and then it's just full of words in all caps. It's like I just yell on the page and it's funny. It's like no, it's not.
Well, then once again, I've twisted around and started thinking about Steve Wright because his jokes are on the page of. I mean, it's all of a piece because he just was.
Well, I meant I was talking about an artist. I'm talking about like when a comic. Like when they give like some dumbass road comic a column and like the Just for Laughs, and it was always like, "Hello, people?" Question mark. No, it's a different. You're doing a different thing. This is a completely different medium. I'm going to sidetrack you, but I'm going to
please do.
It's parallel route. My oldest daughter went to college this year, and
good man.
She is a good man, and I was telling her she's great. She's super, gets it, sharp, funny, wants nothing to do with show business.
Neither did my son. I was so happy.
Yeah. But I said to her, you'll find that college is you'll find that here it's a great version of the world. Half the people you want nothing to do with, and of the other half, you'll want to hang with about 20%.
Yeah, that's very good analysis. Sure.
Yeah, and so don't stress out.
It's a microcosm for sure of the whole thing.
Yeah. And the same goes for stand-up comedians. The smartest people I know have done stand-up comedy.
Yeah, that's true.
The dumbest people I've ever met, stand-up comedy.
Yeah, that's true.
There is no in between. There's like the smart, you get your Kevin Rooney's and you get your name deleted.
First of all, using comedy or stand-up as a polling group is fun because it's the funniest. It's the best job in the world.
Right.
I mean, I think the songwriting is the best job in the world.
Which is what you do for your bread and butter.
Man. So using comedy about that is fun to do as a polling.
Yeah.
But of course it's a fallacy because you can do that with any group. It's just fun to use comedians.
Yeah.
Because every group, what was the old Theodore Sturgeon thing of 10% of everything is good. The rest is crap. And that's a fun thing to say too, which is false, but it's also true.
Yeah.
And it's good kind of just to remember to keep a healthy mind that everything's going to be lousy. You have to reach for the good stuff and create it yourself. You have to create meaning in the world. That's one of the themes in the book because there isn't any meaning. It's all meaningless.
Right.
Even in this book, the creator doesn't have any idea how he got there. The third book is where, because the creator is just a shell, a mask, a personified God. Personified because you can't do anything without a body.
Right.
So the universe is just pure consciousness. So having itself personified is very useful because it's fun. Then you can do fun things. You can have ice cream. You can go skating and everything. So the third book is where Satan has been thrust into the time void, which was the idiot demons had destroyed heaven using a weapon that Satan only meant to, because it's all enchantments.
Right.
Which is what the future of physics is. You could just call it enchantments. It's just all math shit that can go in any direction. And a lot of it is contradictory to each other. Thus the many worlds theory and stuff like that.
Right.
But it all makes sense.
Yeah, because it's all mathematical.
Because it's all mathematical. So, and it's extremely, detail oriented to the max. So you can always point out stuff, but it's fun when you talk to mathematicians, of whom I've tried to become friends with a lot of them. It's the most fascinating shit ever. Talk about a group of, like the group of comedians.
Yeah, I can imagine it's the same thing. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's the smartest and the dumbest.
It is the smartest and the dumbest. And I don't know if the dumbest have more power than they used to, or if we just are exposed to it more, because you do read stuff in the 50s were just as fucked up as now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it really was.
That's exactly right. Although there was a gap in between because of the cyclic nature of it, where it was marvelous during the 60s and all that crazy. That was way different.
Right. And I think that for a lot of people, myself included, who came of age, I didn't come of age in the 60s, I came of age in the late 70s, early 80s, but it was that cultural influence was still so prevalent that when it returned to the normal cycle of ignorance, it felt like the bottom had fallen out, when in fact the aberration was, it was rare that things were this good.
Well, let's put it a different way. Let's put it, what you're calling an aberration was just a transition between two low levels of stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I think really it's just transitions between less levels of stupidity. And I'm speaking of myself, just looking at my own life. It's obvious. It's just a total waveform of stupidity, just different highs or lows of it. What I was getting at about this book is that the third book, because I'm so excited about that, that's what I'm working on now. I have to drag myself away from working on this other great thing with my son, which we spent a year outlining, and it's so much fun to write, but I'm so nagging to get this thing done before I croak, is that the demons used a weapon that Satan had only wanted to be used as a stopgap thing, as a MAD weapon, mutual destruction,
right?
Which destroys time.
Mm-hmm.
So during that, in the locale of the influence of the explosion of the
the weapon is Pornhub. It destroys time. 5 hours. I'm at a red light.
I wish I thought of jokes like that. I don't think I did put a couple jokes in about, but at any rate, I wanted to get to just what the third book is, because it's fun for me to talk about. And that's that Satan got thrust in. The thing accidentally went off and thrust Satan, who was there on a solo mission to just kill God. And the demons, through a trick that God himself had posited in the past, to get them to destroy heaven, because heaven was ruins, and God was too embarrassed to destroy it himself, because all the angels had committed suicide, and the whole place was full of trash because nothing disintegrates.
Two things about heaven: one, gated community, not interested. Two, why should it be unlike any other system?
Yeah, it's gonna
decay. Yeah, it has to decay.
Well, the unique thing about heaven in this satire is that nothing decays, nothing rusts, nothing gets old, nothing dies.
Right, but the system itself decayed, but living in their own filth because it doesn't go away. Yeah.
Well said. That's exactly the satire.
You must have read Masters of Atlantis too.
Fuck yeah, Rudy and I read parts of that together.
Yeah, okay. Because it also
we used to read it out loud when his eyes started going. We'd read it.
Yeah, it feels like It feels like Masters of Atlantis, brilliant book by Charles Portis.
Funniest shit ever.
I only know of that book because of Rooney.
I know it through him too.
Yeah, of course you do. We're talking about our friend Kevin Rooney.
Yeah, very influential character who's on our minds now.
Yeah.
By the way, I love you, Kevin, if you listen to this.
He's not. He has to listen to me enough as it is.
So in the third book, to track just what I'm talking about that I wanted to say, was that the third book actually deals with that. And the demons go on a quest into the time void to try to save Satan. God's already retired, and heaven's destroyed. So the angels, the demons, and humans, they curate teams like Magellan of different time vehicles to go into the time void to try to find Satan and save him. I mean, one of the people who gets picked is Hitler, one of the expeditions starves and they end up eating him. So at any rate, they do find out how the universe sprouts out of nothingness. I'm so happy about this third book
I think this leads me naturally to my next question, which was, what are your favorite kind of boobs? No,
I think au naturel would be the answer. The funniest, though, are not natural. But the favorite would be natural.
There was a time when well, I guess it still is there, the magazine stand at Laurel and Ventura.
Oh, yeah.
And there used to be a magazine, you have like all the magazines, and then right behind the guy
there was
is
boobs
the dirty
there?
magazines. No, but there was one called Perfect 10. And what it was
Really?
it was a specialty magazine. And the specialty was
what?
They were not enhanced. That it was just regular human beings.
Huh.
And that was a niche.
That was the specialty.
That was a niche audience.
That's a profound thing to talk about, because every library is just unnatural. It's not anything real. It's reality enhanced, because reality sucks.
Yes.
So every library is just that fake reality put on top of this reality. You know?
But are you? This was the question that I wanted to ask. Are you a hopeful person?
Well, I have two. Look, I lucked out having a wonderful family.
Mm-hmm.
Not only my parents. I mean, I lucked out.
Yeah,
the best parents ever. And my brother. Are you kidding? And my kids and my wife. I just lucked out.
Right.
I mean, it's pure luck.
Right.
I mean, how does that work? So, of course, I'm hopeful and positive.
Do you think that because your parents were so clearly they're very supportive?
Oh, totally.
Do you think that's why you never became a stand-up? Because you didn't have that hole that you had to fill?
Yeah.
But you did have a comedy mentality?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
There was a great quote.
I never even thought of it like that before. That's fascinating.
I think it was Brezhnev said this about Nixon. Was it, imagine if he had been loved.
Holy shit.
But Nixon, who had been loved, would have never been the president.
Holy shit. Wow. Oh, so that's the ultimate paradox you're talking about, because pain is what creates everything.
You go on stage in a club, stand in a light with a thing to make your voice loud, and literally beg strangers to love you.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody, now that I've gotten my emotional shit together, I'm going to concentrate on my ventriloquism. Nobody.
All right, let's say that you're right about that. Let's say that there's a niche group of comedians
and I think there are
who do it because it's fun.
And there are comedians that have great supportive parents that I was talking about just in your case, because you had,
No, I think that you just fucking cracked the case.
No,
I mean, for real.
I know comedians that have great parents, great supportive parents.
Well, because that's the lens that I see through anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily, to repeat it to the max of pure luck, it's interesting now thinking about that, because I think that's certainly the general rule is it's all from pain, you know?
Yeah.
But
the
other thing is it's from fun.
Right. And it's also an overstatement that it's all from pain. But I mean, you do see it played out. I love looking at people, seeing where they're broken and how they have used and how their limp has created who they are. We were talking about Get Back. John Lennon and Paul McCartney, neither one of them had a mother.
Yeah.
They needed each other.
And
they couldn't leave each other until they met other partners with whom they both developed incredibly intense codependent relationships. Like Paul and Linda's favorite things. We've never been apart. John and like we're one person. Neither one of those healthy, by the way.
Dude, but you know what? The reason why I just this is astonishing to me, because I don't think like this. This is very helpful to me. because
I'm
what you're talking about
6 days a week, 7 hours a day.
What you're talking about with using the Beatles or anything like that are the most powerful groups of people.
Yeah.
There's nobody more powerful than that.
Right.
And then to analyze that the way you just did is like very enlightening to me. So I never thought of it because I come from this other place.
Right.
Jeez, that's so useful
it's
to
not
me.
It's not universal, but it's interesting how.
All I'm thinking about is how to apply it to the third one.
Good. As well you should. But as you gave me an idea that I'm going to steal at some point, which is in the absence of God, you must preserve Satan. Because the existence of Satan will create God's replacement.
Fuck yeah, man.
Yeah,
that's right.
Nature finds a balance. It's the reason Godzilla fights Mothra. And that's where I wanted to get us to.
What's the famous quote about the vacuum? The
nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just love sometime just to sit down with you and say, all right, what was it like in the room when you did this show? You know what I mean?
I'm going to talk about myself in your interview, which is really
no, I'm asking you to.
I consider myself a comedian who does other things.
Yeah.
I'm a comedian who can write. I'm a comedian who can act. But doing stand-up is the nuclear rod that sort of powers my endeavors. It's not how I make my living, but I still do it. So then I get a job, I'm working on The Simpsons, and I'm dealing with a whole other level of writing ability. Like it's like Stephen Wright is I'm not saying his genius, but his approach was the norm. Like, no, you have to excel. That's the norm.
Yes, I see.
You have to excel. That's where we start.
Right. Been there.
Right. So I am driving to Las Vegas with George Meyer, who was a famous Simpsons writer, the architect of 9 of your 10 favorite Simpsons jokes are George's. And we were going to Vegas for the Consumer Electronics Show or something.
Yeah.
And just along the way, like we went through this one patch of road where there was just a lot of roadkill. Just like a lot of it.
Okay.
And he was seriously suggested, like, he's like, we could pull over and make tiny suicide notes and put them into their hands. And then he just started to compose like, life in the wild had become too much. To my children, I leave my succulent innards. Just like, again, like another level.
You guys must have been howling.
Just casual stuff. Like, you go through that little town before Vegas and it had $1.99 all you can eat shrimp buffet. And George just goes, again, like not even thinking, had it up to here with all you can eat $2 shrimp buffets. Yeah, just like, and
hey,
George,
what would you call that? Being able to cut to that.
Oh man, it's just brutal. Yeah, it's Rooney-ish. It's Rooney.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just like right to the bullseye.
Yeah. That's
but George also had an affectation where he liked to wear like a hat, like a Gilligan hat, like a bucket hat. It's just his affectation.
Yeah.
And we're in the hotel, and a comedian that I know is in Vegas, and he sees me in the lobby and comes over, and just starts roasting George for his hat. Like, hey, Gilligan, how you doing over here? Like,
okay, sure.
Like
interesting setup for a scene.
Yeah, and George is just chuckling because he's a really good guy.
Doesn't want to expend energy.
This guy's a headliner, he's a headliner. He's a big guy. And he's just like roasting George, and George is kind of smiling. And I just want to say that it's like, you are like a guy at a bar and you think you're picking a fight with Muhammad Ali. And
you're
you don't
making
realize
fun of Einstein.
Yeah. Like, it's like, the reason he hasn't said anything is because you haven't gotten into his level of the stratosphere yet. And that was really one of those things. It was like, oh God. It's again, like going back to Kevin Rooney. It's like, Charles Portis is the coolest guy in the room, or who wrote,
Samuel Beckett for sure.
Who wrote True Grit?
Portis.
Portis wrote True Grit. It's like, you see him, he looks like a guy who's going to a hardware store, but he's written, he is as punk rock as anybody was ever, it's like a lot of that is just affectation and style. It's really what you're thinking and what you're writing that is, truly dangerous.
Some Valley Girls making fun of Einstein was the first funny bit I ever wrote.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's a perfect example. But now, and this is not new. It's old, but I don't understand. This is what I don't understand.
Well, sometimes there's an origin of jokes, as you know. I mean, there is an origin of some of these categories of jokes, which is the most fascinating thing to me ever.
There was supposedly a joke book that went around Auschwitz. I don't know. The prisoners wrote jokes about being in the prison camp.
Get out.
And handed around. Look it up.
I fucking will look it up.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, survival. You're going to survive.
Wow.
What I don't understand, and again, it's not new. It's not the arrogance, and it's not the ignorance. It's the arrogance of the ignorance.
Oh, yeah. That's where we're at. constantly. That's the lowest. That's the lower rung.
Like
totally.
An example with the anti-vaccine movement.
Totally.
That people say well, I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we have people smarter than you.
And meanwhile, they're watching TV and listening to radio.
Yeah. But it's like, dude.
As if they have any idea how that works.
Yeah, right. I don't know how zippers work. How do you get on an airplane?
We're at a place
It's not
now.
a wizard.
We're at a place now. We're at a place now where
Goldthwait calls it the Juggalo Nation.
Wow.
But there was a political party called the Know Nothings. I mean, this is not new. It was like people used to be proud of
the main thing now
blocking
is
out reality.
Every right-wing person that I know now who's a good friend is religious. Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's just very fearful time.
Yes.
So there's two things to try to juggle in your psyche, and that's compassion on the people because they're all afraid.
Yeah.
Because they just can't deal with it. They're spoiled brats.
And and you have to have compassion. And that's hard.
And the other thing is
it's hard for people who have lapsed into a culture of performative cruelty.
Wow. Fuck yeah. And if you also are so compassionate, you allow stuff like January 6th to happen. It's just an impossible situation. It's unprecedented.
The way we failed to stop the steal. And then you find out that I was there. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, no,
I saw you there.
Well, we both know somebody that was there.
I know. Holy shit.
Yeah. But I think that is one of those things that in 4 years of softening up the beachhead, that I don't think that people have really taken in what that was.
Yeah, you're right.
And they never will because
it was a unique perfect storm, of course, because of COVID. But I guess it makes sense that we could just see this coming now, and it's a classic hindsight thing.
In broadcast news, written by my old boss, Jim Brooks, Albert Brooks has that line. I don't know if Albert improvised. I'm sure Jim wrote it. He goes, "What do you think the devil's going to look like? With the horns and a tail? No. He's going to wear a nice suit. He's going to have a nice haircut. And little by little, he'll lower our standards everywhere it's important."
Wow.
That's what he did.
Wow.
Which brings us full circle, because you have kids.
Yeah.
Are you hopeful about the future? Like everyone goes like, this generation's going to save us. I'm like, yeah, they were saying about that. They said that about my generation. My generation sucks.
Well, I tend to be delusional.
Uh-huh.
I think I tend to be delusional. And a good friend told me that once, because I want to think that things are going to get better, which is what stupid people do. So, but I do think that because obviously it's all a function of time.
Yeah.
And so things are going to dissolve. And I think having a viewpoint that a cyclic nature of history rules is sanity.
That and it's true.
What's your spiritual view of life?
I don't know. I would think that being a decent human being is I think that to me, the what I teach my kids, to varying degrees of success, is that the most treasured human affect or aspect is empathy.
Fuck yeah.
You can't let it all in all the time, but you always have to see where the other person is coming from and be aware of how the other person feels. So, I mean, I'd like to think that there's something, but I know that I don't know what it is, and that anybody who does know what it is lying.
So let me add to that. For me, it's a little bit different. With my kids, it was all about sometimes you don't have to like somebody or feel empathy towards them, but you always have to be funny about it. That's the only thing you have to remember.
As long as your favorite.
As long as you're funny about it and you don't fall into the trap of seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all going to die. So it's automatically funny.
Which I will say
it's not serious. We're all going to die. So it's funny.
Had Hitler, just before putting the gun in his mouth, turned to camera and said, "Po buddy's nerfect."
Where'd you come up with that?
That would have been just.
Oh, right. Okay. And on that note.
Yeah, we can stop on that. We're at an hour.
Other podcasts.
Let's reach for the sky. The Dana Gould Hour.
We barely try.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Produced by Jeff Fox. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano.
Hey, if you like the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com. Tom Kenny speaking.
I'm a DJ, I'm a DJ, I'm a person, I'm a person, I'm a singer, I'm a singer, I love to sing and DJ. Boom! Peace out, peace out. You want me? Peace out. Boom.